definitely, there were definitely a lot of similarities with the clients in that way, and you know, how young they were too. You know, they were 15, 20 years in, many of them by the time I met them, but they went to prison, you know, initially young, and they're most in their 20s. And so that, you know, that was definitely, I agree, it was definitely a common thread for sure. And a lot of it, I think, I was at a panel last night at UTA in Arlington about addiction, you know, and we were talking about drug addiction, but my clients, especially in the book, the Wilson brothers that I talk about, they talk about there's also this addiction to that drug dealing lifestyle and money and having things you never had before. You know, there's addiction shows up in all forms. And so, you know, while they started out small, you know, arguably they turned into much larger enterprises, if you will, than even initially set out to do, but then nowhere nearly as large as, you know, the government painted these monstrous organizations. And so it was all an interesting, eye-opening experience, you know, for me as a law student and young lawyer, learning about how these laws actually work, you know.
Brittany, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So I haven't finished the book. My intention to finish the book, but I know about gems.
Yeah.
Gem. But the difference between the 100 times law,
Oh, yeah.
is that still in effect? Do you know? Is it still?
It is not, but it's not where it should be either. So it was 100-1 for years, decades. And then in 2010, President Obama signed the Fair Sentencing Act of 2010 into law. And that reduced that 100-1 ratio to 18-1. But it was not made retroactive, you know, and a lot of people were still upset about that, because it's like, why not 1-1? You know, where are we getting 18? You know, where are these numbers even coming from?
Right.
But it was reduced to 18-1, but it was not made retroactive, which I'm sure you all see as a common thread in the book. You know, how people, these laws change, and general public, it's very exciting because we're seeing progress and change, but then we don't know that, oh, well, it's only going to help people who are arrested in the future. And so people push for years and years to make that 18-1 ratio retroactive so that it could help people who have been in prison. And that change came in 2018. So it took 8 years to make that 18-1 ratio retroactive. And that was made retroactive in 2018 by President Trump through the First Step Act. And so the interesting part about that is then we find ourselves last year during the congressional session where the Equal Act was brought to the floor, and that is a 1-1. That's what it should be. You know, people have been arguing for years that powder cocaine and crack cocaine should be treated the same. So the Equal Act was brought to the floor, passed the House of Representatives overwhelmingly. We believe it would have passed the Senate. Unfortunately, you know, the Senate majority leaders never brought the bill to the floor for a vote, and it died. The bill died in December. And so there's gearing back up, you know, the advocacy organizations to bring this Equal Act back to the forefront of minds. And so, yeah, it has changed slowly but surely, been made retroactive, you know, and now, you know, we're trying to push even further to completely eliminate that ratio.
I have a question.
Yes.
I was struck that most of the people in your book, it looked like they got into drug dealing for economic reasons. They were in a crisis or something. But so many people get into it because they're first addicted, and that's the way they, in a small time basis, that's the way they, you know, fuel their addiction, and then it gets bigger, and then they get caught, and then they go to prison. Can you talk about that? about the different ways people get into it?
Yeah, but many different ways. That was a great observation. Thank you for bringing that up. None of the clients in my book had drug addictions.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, Sharonda Jones has never used drugs in her life. She's never even had an alcoholic beverage in her life. And so, that was the ironic part for them. But with Sharonda, for example, it was desperate need for money. She was getting by as a cosmetologist. She had a small hair salon in Terrell, Texas, in East Texas, but it was just getting by. And then with the growing needs of her daughter, the growing needs of her quadriplegic mother, she saw serving as a drug mule, for lack of a better term, for two major drug dealers as her way to make some extra money. And unfortunately, those handful of trips that she made for the drug suppliers landed her in prison with a life sentence.
I was really impressed, Brittany, with all that you've done. It's like you went to law school and then decided you wanted to go over here and accomplish this huge thing, and your energy is really inspirational.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The people that I was helping really fueled me, and it was, it's definitely nothing more urgent than freedom for me, but I will say, it caught up with my mind, with my body, with everything. And so I definitely felt in the past couple of years, it caught up to just utter depletion and exhaustion. A lot of people were freed and saved through the work, which gives me joy, but it also is like, okay, it's definitely time for me to take some time for myself, and really kind of slow down, expand gym. We're working on expansion for Girls Embracing Mothers, and really start working to train other lawyers to be able, to take on some of this work, and pass the baton. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not always you.
That's great. I'd like to learn more about Jim, like what kinds of things you do and where it is now. And
yeah, absolutely. So GEM is an acronym for Girls Embracing Mothers. It is a nonprofit organization that I started 10 years ago. We celebrate 10 years this year. We're so excited.
Yay!
Yes. And so I started after experiencing the incarceration of my own mother, she was incarcerated at Woodman. Then she went to Lockhart and then Safe P. And she served 2.5 years and was released. And my sister and I were young adults when our mother was incarcerated, but it was still very devastating for us, and I say all the time, it is truly a devastating experience when you have any loved one who's incarcerated. But I can say from firsthand experience that it is a primal wound when it's your mom. When it's your mom. And so that experience just really motivated me, and inspired me to start Girls Embracing Mothers, because even though I was a young adult experiencing the incarceration of my mom, I still had something in common with the younger girls. And that was that we loved our mamas. And that love is unconditional. So I wanted to help break the cycle of incarceration and build the bond between mothers and daughters through Girls Embracing Mothers. So we work to empower girls with mothers in prison, to break the cycle of incarceration, to lead successful lives with vision and purpose. We've partnered with Texas Women's Prisons for the past 10 years. Our core program is our Pearl program, where we take girls from the Dallas-Fort Worth area to visit their mothers in prison every single month. We started at Woodman. We were there for 6 years at Woodman. First Saturday of every month, we're there. The prison gives us a special partnership. They allow us 4 hours to visit versus the 2 hours, that Texas normally gets. We're in the education building typically to ourselves. We get to bring in food so the girls can eat lunch with their moms. We bring in arts and craft supplies for art therapy. with the moms, and we always cover a lesson that revolves around critical life issues. We're really employing a 2-generational model, a 2-gen approach that was set forth by the Aspen Institute, which really just means, working with the parent and child simultaneously, and doing that in a way where we describe as, really centering healing justice, and really working to lessen the traumatic impact, that comes from maternal incarceration. And so we've been very grateful for our partnership with TDCJ. Of course, when COVID hit, it just devastated. It devastated everything, for all of us. And so we didn't have visits for over 2 years. We just got back in the prisons in November, and we are so excited. But we are now at Crane. And so we are at the Crane. We serve women. We serve all the women's prisons in Gatesville. So the women who are not at Crane are bussed over. We served all the women's prisons when we were at Woodman. It's funny because we never had any women in our program from Woodman, but we were on that unit because the wardens didn't want us to go to another unit. But then it started not to make a lot of sense because we never had mothers from there. So we're at Woodman, and I'm so excited. We were able to double our staff this year to 6 people, and that's going to help us out a lot. We were small, but mighty, but there's so much more work to do. We're in talks to potentially expand our programming to Lockhart and Mississippi and Arkansas. So
Wow.
we are looking forward to that for sure. We're in talks with Central Facility in Mississippi, which is in Pearl, Mississippi. It's funny, we're here in Texas, with numerous women's prisons, and Mississippi has 1, Alabama has, and it's kind of mind-boggling when you think. I think there's like 700 women incarcerated in Mississippi, and Texas, we're over 10,000, I think. So it's mind-boggling when you compare. So yeah, Jim is my baby for sure. We have a diamond program where we do empowerment workshops throughout the year. We have an annual summer camp. We're actually already gearing up for our 6th annual summer camp in June. We usually have about 25 girls. We started the first 4 years going to Texas Hill Country. Then COVID hit, and the HEB clubs were closing. And so we ended up, we were invited by the Girl Scouts in Northeast Texas to use their camp facility in Dallas. And it's just been amazing. So we also started before the pandemic, maybe a year before the pandemic, doing mom-only meetings. So we also meet with just the moms the 4th Friday of every month. Just really focusing, as I mentioned, we are truly centering what we call healing justice. And, for our healing justice framework is really for collective healing and social change. And so we're working with curriculum that aims to holistically respond and intervene on generational trauma by bringing collective practices that can impact and transform the consequences of oppression, on our bodies and on our hearts and minds. And so with the healing justice curriculum we're working with, I believe Truth Be Told works with this curriculum as well, but it goes deep, it's intense, but it's like the beauty of a diamond, which is our logo. It's in order to shine bright like a diamond, we must go through an intense heat and crushing pressure, and that process releases the beauty of a diamond we all admire. And so the healing justice curriculum it's intense, not as in strict or anything, but it invites the women to go deep within themselves. Our staff too, we're all doing it together, and understanding the impact of childhood trauma, and how it impacts our decisions as adults, and how we can break through that and show up, radically different for ourselves and our daughters and the world.
I have a
Thanks for
question.
asking about Jim.
I have a question for you, Brittany, about Jim. Have you ever considered having like a satellite from Austin where you would bring the girls from Austin?
Yes, we have, and we were working through it and thinking about maybe partnering with UT or the college, because our biggest issue, quite frankly, Laura, is capacity and funding. You know, we are working with donors now trying to fundraise and say, hey, we could get a program coordinator. Even, you know, we go once a month, you know, it's interacting with the girls and the guardians to get them there, facilitate the lessons. But yes, we've definitely considered it, and really our biggest obstacle is funding to hire someone to be present there, because TDCJ has been very generous, you know, to us, and I know that they would be very open, you know, for us to come to Lockhart and serve girls in the Austin area.
Wow.
And I will say, you know, too, as I'm working with donors and talking to them, you know, everyone on the phone, you know, in nonprofit knows how difficult it is to fundraise. It's one of the things I wish we didn't have to do. There's a magic wand with all the money so we could do the good work that we do, you know, and it's just showing that we need capacity, you know, to build, but it's also showing, hey, our program is tried and true. It's incredibly scalable, you know, and can be implemented anywhere, you know, but we have to have people, and we have to pay people.
Yeah.
That is important, that people are paid and paid their worth, you know, and that's something, you know, I think we struggle with at GM and in the nonprofit industry, probably across the board, that we are just underpaid.
You mentioned that you have programs that you work with just the moms. Do you work with the daughters separately on any specific programs other than when you take them once a month to go see their mothers?
Yes, through our Diamond program where we have the summer camp. It's a 4-day overnight summer camp. And then we have like monthly events, whether it's career workshops. This Saturday, we're having our annual vision board party for the girls, and the guardians come. We do a summer camp, as I mentioned. We have an Amplify Her event every fall where we bring women and girls together from across the state. Honestly, we've had group organizations come from New Orleans to join us, and it's just a day of empowerment. We have breakout sessions for the adults and guardians and the girls, depending on age. And then we have an annual holiday giving event where we give gifts to the girls and their brothers and the guardians too, you know, so it's a day of fun and Christmas crafts and gifts.
Harriet, I think you had a question.
Yeah, where's your friend Kim Kardashian? She should be funding.
I know, it's like, come on.
Come on.
Yeah, you know, it's a double-edged sword sometimes with that. You know, she definitely stepped in and helped me with the Buried Alive project, the other nonprofit that I have, really raising awareness. She has contributed financially some to that organization, but I think because we work together, people assume that I'm just rolling the dough. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword that I'm like, oh, you know, she helped with her platform to raise awareness, you know.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a challenge, you know, to maneuver through that whole.
So Brittany, I'll be calling you because the buzzword in Austin, at least in nonprofits, is collaboration. So if we can collaborate Dallas to Austin, we should talk.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of even sharing employees. Or
Yeah,
officing each other's employees.
I would definitely love to talk, because I know my mom was at Lockhart, you know, and I know that Lockhart in general, you know, is very flexible and has a lot of great programming, you know, and so yeah, I'd love to talk.
Well, and truth be told too, I know that you guys do awesome work, and I don't have an idea to collaborate, but I would love to talk about it and see, because we don't have a curriculum per se. We do when we work with the Strive with the women who are going to be on parole or be released. We have a nurturing parenting program, but when we do our readings or have mom read to their child, it's all about just the joy of reading, and that connection and forging that connection and making it stronger. But that's fairly simple compared to the curriculums that you guys have.
I would love for that to happen. Of course, Tina, Ashley, and I, we're just facilitators, so we can't speak for the administration or for the board. But I would love, we've talked about all three of us drive up to Lane Murray every week to do our classes, and we talk about how much empowerment we would have if we had several of these groups collaborating together. That we could share our resources and share our facilitators, and we're small, but we're very committed as far as the volunteers. So I don't know, because like I said, we're not administrators, we're not staff, we're not board, but as volunteers, I think that I speak for the volunteers that we would love for something like that to happen.
Absolutely. I'm going to chime in. If this is Black of Red and Black, if you can kind of loop me in that conversation as well. The book that Neiman Marcus launched, so the last thing we expected is to be embraced by the chaplaincy department of TGCJ. But it's being used as a financial literacy and life 101 program, and it's being test driven to be rolled out to all women's facilities. It was actually introduced in the men's facilities 10 years ago. So thousands of men and women have been through it already in TGCJ, but it was written, as I said in the beginning, as the basis of a sitcom. And so it's not a textbook, even though the State Board of Education approved it as a financial literacy textbook. And so it's something that could easily be read by women who are incarcerated, or obviously men as well, and their daughters in the free world. And then gives them an opportunity to have something to discuss, because it was actually introduced, our journey started at Kip Houston High School with a bunch of high school students. And we gave them copies of the book and said, what, if anything, do you think you and your peers would be interested in? Because I knew if they don't find it relevant, there's no point in doing this. And they just embraced the book. So please consider me in these conversations. It's not what our company does, but it's my personal passion project. So just loop me in and let me know if I can do anything.
All right.
Oh, and Brittany, Jaya Davis knows all about me and has got a bunch of our data that she's analyzing. So
Oh, that's awesome.
she knows how to get a hold of me as well. So
That's awesome. That's who's, I was at her, she moderated the panel I was at last night.
I figured that was the one.
Yeah.
I'm in Houston. I keep threatening that I'm going to come up there.
Brittany, I also had a question. Sorry, Harriet, go ahead. You could ask.
Well, I was just going to ask Brittany, what was the hardest thing about writing this book? Because you're reliving everything you went through all over again, and that must have been exhausting.
That's what I was gonna say. The hardest thing was the first 5 chapters. Writing about my mother's addiction, and then her imprisonment. It was also hard to write about that, not just from my own personal pain, but for my mama, because we're so protective of our mamas, and it was like, I have to tell this ugly truth, but I don't want to write the book if I'm not going to tell the whole story in all of its authenticity. And so I had a conversation with my mom about it, and she gave me permission. She said, tell my story, feel free, tell about me and at my worst. So that was helpful. But then when it's written and she reads it, it's different, right? Because it's always different when you read the stories on paper. And so I remember when the first draft was done, and I said, I have to send this to my mom. I have to send at least the first 5 chapters to my mom. And I printed it all out for her, and she took the day off work to read it. And I didn't hear from her all that day. I was like, oh, what's happening? And then she called around 7 or 8 that evening. she was bawling, she was crying, and I said, oh my goodness, she's about to curse me. And she said, Brittany, this is beautiful. And it was just the sweetest thing. And I knew then that, you know, I had done what needed to be done, and that is share our story and all of its truth and how addiction showed up in our lives and in my life. You know, this was my story of how addiction impacted me.
Right.
And she understood that, you know, that. And when I have book clubs, I've had book clubs with people in prison, men and women. I just did a book club last summer with the men on death row in Parchman, Mississippi. And it was the first time they'd ever been allowed to be out of their cells at the same time and convene together.
Wow.
And they tested it out. I appeared via Zoom. And then the third and final meeting, I appeared in person. And it was remarkable. And the most we talk about when we go through the book clubs with people in prison are those first 5 chapters.
Oh.
And it's just because how many people can relate to either having an incarcerated parent or, you know, having friends that sold drugs, or the love of the grandma, you know, and extended family, and being from rural communities. Like, there's just so much commonality in all of our lives. You know, we share so much more common ground than we know. And even though that was the hardest part to write, it seems like it's the part that resonates the most with people. And so that definitely made it all worth it.
How many drafts of that first 5 chapters did you have?
It was a lot. And that is something I learned about writing, but I never thought I would write a book. You know, I never set out to do it. I've always been a good writer, but I don't like to write.
Oh.
And so, and then there was also, well, I don't do this work for a book. You know, I do the work because I really believe in it. And I don't want people to think, you know, that that's what I'm doing this work for. But then my clients started to encourage me to write a book. And so when they did, it was like, okay, they're giving me permission, you know, to share their stories. And so I was speaking with a mentor of mine before, because I would get at my laptop to type those first chapters. And I mean, sometimes I'd be sitting there like 3 hours at my desk and I'm crying. And I look up and I've written like 4 sentences. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no way I could finish a book at this pace. And so I was getting anxious and kind of discouraged. And a friend of mine who's a dear friend and mentor, he said, Brittany, you are a good speaker. Why don't you just speak the book? And I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, record yourself, like verbally record yourself, verbalizing the book. And I said, oh, I never thought about that. And so I got with a dear friend of mine who's just a very conscientious listener, and she would interview me. And so we were recorded. And so if I was visiting Sharonda Jones at the prison, and I'm telling her about my first visit with Sharonda, and she may stop me and say, you know, what, do you remember what you were wearing that day? Do you remember what the weather was like? Do you remember what the prison visitation room smelled like? You know, and so we had like 40 hours of audio, and I used this transcription company and sent it all the audio to have it transcribed. And it helped so much. It gave me a chunk of the book. There was still a lot of work to do after that, because you got to come up with story arcs and polish it and all that stuff. But at least I had tangible words on the paper to work with. And so, and some people, I have friends, they'll go and they'll type 10 pages, you know, in an hour. I'm not one of those people, you know. And so I definitely had to find what worked best for me, you know. And that was what it was. And so definitely after that, it was lots of revisions. I would read some of the things I said, and then it would make me remember something else. You know, like, oh yeah, that happened, or oh yeah, like, and so it was just an ongoing process. It's like, I've learned it's the beauty of writing, and it's the challenge of writing too. It's revision. Yeah.
Brittany, how long did it take you to write the book?
2 years. But I was, you know, my plan was, you know, I got this book I'm gonna write it, I want to take the time and the space to just focus on writing. And I didn't. I got I was working to get people out of prison. I was working on gym, I'm doing all this stuff at once and writing the book, and so I'm actually working on my next book now, and I'm hopeful to be much more intentional about the process, and really, letting go of a lot of things now that we've staffed up at gym. I'm learning to let go of my baby, and delegate and know that it can't grow to be what it needs to be with just me.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. And so because I have a team now, I'm able to focus more on the writing of this next book. And so I'm hopeful it's a little different. I'm actually gonna try to write a little more, Harriet, this time. So
Okay.
instead of doing the verbal thing, I'm gonna actually try to write more. So I've been reading Toni Morrison, I've been reading poetry, just to kind of decompress and open the imagination. I'm looking forward to the imagination process in this.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can just envision you writing and then printing out a page and not liking it and wadding it up and being angry at it, tossing it away, kind of a cathartic kind of process.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Brittany, I had a question about the young women, the young girls that you meet at GEM. Like, do you feel that your story has inspired them to change the course of their life as well? I mean, I know you said that there's a healing therapy, they meet with their mothers, but your story, do you think, has also been instrumental?
I hope so. They tell me that it does. And my mom, she's been home for 15 years now, and she had a very severe drug addiction, and then she got her nursing license back and was working at a drug recovery center. And so seeing her too, I think really helps for the women in prison to know that they can break the cycle. And then the girls, I've had girls in our program that's like, always wanted to be a lawyer and didn't know any lawyer, like me. I grew up in rural East Texas. I didn't know any lawyers. And so I always wanted to be a lawyer, like Claire Huxtable on the Cosby Show. I adored her. But then growing up, it started to feel like becoming a lawyer was out of my league because I didn't know any, and I definitely didn't know any lawyers who looked like me. And it shows how representation is so important. And so I'm hopeful that the girls in our program with lawyer dreams or whatever their dreams may be can look at me and the volunteers and mentors we bring and know, to dream their biggest dream.
Yeah. That's
so
wonderful.
good.
Yeah.
And also one more question about the mothers, like how can the mothers get in the program? Like what's the process of them getting into your program?
Yeah, so used to the prison had an application that they would give them and they would send to us, but now it's starting to be like word of mouth. So they write us directly. Of course, they have to have a daughter in the Dallas-Fort Worth area right now. We usually like for the mothers to have at least, 9-10 months left on their sentence so we could get months in. But otherwise, just write to us and reach out and see what our capacity is. The prison right now, the prison allows us to bring in 25 girls at a time. And so that's usually about 15 or 16 mothers there. Some of them have more than one daughter. And so now we are at capacity and we have a small waiting list. It's not that long. So if they write, you can get on the waiting list. And then as the moms are paroled out, we fill them.
Right.
What are the ages that you take the girls? at?
7 to 17. And even if they turn 18 and it's during their senior year, they still come through graduation.
And
Do you follow them after?
I'm sorry.
After the moms get out, do you provide support to the girls?
Yes. Over half of the girls in our Diamond program, where we do the empowerment for the girls, over half of those girls were in Pearl. And honestly, our most dedicated volunteers are women who were incarcerated and in our program.
Oh,
Yeah, our senior program director, Angelica Zaragoza, she was in our program when she was at Hilltop. And yeah, now she's leading our programming.
Perfect.
Rebecca, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, hi. I just had a quick question, kind of going back to what you were saying about how representation really matters. And you mentioned meeting Krista in your book, and I was wondering if you guys are still in touch.
We are still in touch. My birthday was last month on the 23rd, and my team put together these video happy birthdays, and she sent a video in, and my heart just melted. And so Krista was a young Black woman lawyer that I randomly reached out to after I saw her photo on the law firm website. And she met with me, this complete stranger who had a dream of going to law school. And I always say, Krista took my hand in that Starbucks we met, and she has not let it go. And that was 2007, 16 years ago. She walked me through the law school application process and my career. And yeah, she was a baby lawyer, as we call them, when I met her. I think she was maybe her second year of practicing law, and now she's a partner at that same firm. And so yeah, we're definitely still in touch.
That's
Thanks for
awesome.
asking about her.
Yeah.
If you do expand Jim to Austin, I'd be interested in being involved. I'm sure several of us would like to help. So what kind of volunteer work would you need?
So we
Or
would
could
need
help?
a volunteer to take the girls to the prison. The good thing about Austin, though, I think, is they're in Lockhart. I don't know if it would be too much to have the guardians bring them. I don't know, but in Dallas, we're 2.5 hours away, so we have to bus them. But Jim covered transportation, so they would have to work with the guardians to coordinate a place to drop off. We take in lunch, so they have to pick up food on the way there and facilitate the lessons. We have a curriculum, but someone would need to facilitate the lessons, and then bringing the girls back. So it's a once a month visit, but I would say there's still, a few hours of coordination, just to remind the guardians that it's coming, to get the girls' names. The prison in Gatesville, they normally have us send the names 2 weeks in advance on which of the girls will be attending, so they could do the lay-in list for the moms. And then we have arts and craft supplies that would need to be stored and brought in to every visit as well. And then from there, because we have a couple of social workers on our side and consultants that work with the evaluation, we have surveys that we give, but the facilitator would just administer the surveys to the moms and daughters and send them to the team up here for evaluations. We give a survey when the mom enters the program at the end of every year, and then when the mom exits. So it's not like it's a survey after every lesson. But when I used to do it, when I first started, it was just me and my mom in a van. We would take girls, and I would say, in addition to the day at the prison, we're at the prison from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. In addition to that time, it was probably about 10 hours of work in addition to that.
Well, if you'll just give us ways to contact you or tell you, so you know who's interested, that would be
Yeah,
great.
I will put my email address in the chat.
And if you ever need like volunteers, especially for your summer camp, I'd be willing to come up to Dallas and volunteer my time.
Oh, thank you. I'll send info. We have so much fun. Oh, we have so much fun at camp.
Yeah, I used to be in Girl Scouts, so that would be just up my alley.
That's cool. And I realized it's a lot of work to coordinate the camps, but these girls will have, who forgets a summer camp experience? And many of our girls, when we first started, they'd never been to camp before. They'd never been in a river swimming. And I remember, they're from the inner cities of Dallas, and they're like, Miss Brittany, I ain't getting in no river. And I'm like, I bet you did. That in Texas Hill Country, there's the Frio River. It's crystal clear. It's gorgeous. And you look up and every single girl's jumping in the river. And it was a sight to see. It was a sight to see. All those city girls swimming in the river. So I will definitely send information about that as well. And yeah, definitely would love to talk through Lockhart for sure.
But even Gatesville, Lane Murray I mean, I have facilitated both at Lockhart, which now it's called Coleman, and
Oh, okay, I didn't know
Murray.
that.
Yeah, we truth be told, right now is serving both. But we have talked before about Lane Murray is really where the women really need us, because a lot of those women have life sentences. And so they're more serious
Yeah.
crimes that they're serving, and they're really the ones that could really benefit from this. We have found that at Coleman, there's more chance of them being, paroled out. But Lane Murray, it's very, it's a maximum security. So I could see how that could be more beneficial to provide something for Lane Murray.
We work with Lane Murray. I think we have 2 women in our program that are bussed over from Lane Murray to Crane. We try to have a mix, so we try to have like half of the mothers with release dates coming up in at least the next year or 2, and then the other half will be there for quite a while, unless something change in the law happens or something happens with their case. So we try to do at the shorter sentences with the longer ones, and we're really getting into those mom only meetings as well. Those are turning out to be very, very beneficial. Members of our team took a parenting course in Austin. It was called Nurturing Parenting or something, where they got licensed in the course. And so the women, it was like a 16-week parenting course, and the women can use those certificates, in the event they need to get their kids back when they're gone or things like that. It's been interesting with Jim. We issued a report, and I'll put the link to that in the chat as well, in December. And in our report, we talk about the lack of data surrounding children with incarcerated parents. We don't know who they are. Like, these numbers that are there, are 15 years old, and it's like, so we surveyed all 50 states, Department of Corrections. We called for weeks, and we found that nearly half of the prisons in the country do not track the women in their facilities who are mothers. So if we don't even know what women in the prisons are mothers, we surely don't even know who their children are, even how many they have. And so I'm going to share a link to this report that we issued. And I bring that up because I think if we have more information, we could potentially serve more, including more people who are there for a long time and really understand the depths of the problem. Like, it's hard to serve in the way we need to if we don't even know who the children are. Luckily, we've been in the prisons long enough that we fill our spaces with the Pearl program, but on the program of empowerment workshops that we do, it's been very hard to recruit because we don't know who the girls are, who the children are. So we've been in talks with school districts as well to see if they track the children in the school districts that have an incarcerated parent. It's just been disheartening on how much we don't know about this very unique population of children.
Brittany, you gave such a beautiful description, not beautiful, very specific description of Woodman when you went there and your first sight of it in the blue tin box, and I've been there many times, and now that you have all this life experience with the different units, has that changed for you? Has it changed? Do you think has your view of the prison changed? And 2, do you think there have been substantial changes in the treatment of the women?
No, my view is the same. And I haven't seen substantial changes, but I've seen changes. Unfortunately, those changes I've seen quickly revert back with new wardens. And so it just kind of like depends, where we are now at Crane. The warden at Crane she's been amazing for us. I mean, truly, truly amazing. The chaplain at Crane, it has been probably our most seamless experience in 10 years. But I don't attribute it to the facility itself or TDCJ as a whole. I attribute it to the warden herself.
Okay.
And
I
I know
agree.
there's
I
a
just
lot
wanted to
of-
know your view.
Oh, yeah. I know there was a lot, we're part of the Texas Women's Justice Coalition. And working to advocate for policy change. And I know like in 2019, there was this huge push for women in dignity, and we helped pass the women in dignity bills. And Texas TDCJ, I think they created a position, like a gender specific position for programming for women. And I just don't know what happened to that effort. Like, I don't know if TDCJ fully implemented, the bill as it was passed. And so that's something that's always challenging too, especially when our legislator only meets every 2 years.
I'm on that committee, and the bill for women's programming, TGCJ agreed to it. So apparently it's going to go through via administrative rule versus having
Okay.
that's
versus
voted
legislative.
upon.
Good.
That's really good to know. And then the next one I've learned, especially as you all see through the book as well, is it's one thing to pass a bill or a rule, it's another to implement it the way.
Right. And what happened was, because I was working with them on a strategy approach it. And what we did was we created the pilot program, if you will, as a independent book study, and positioned it so that if there was ever another pandemic, it would still be able to be used, and kind of took it in that way. And because it wouldn't require significant manpower and could be done on an independent basis, then it took away a lot of TGCJ's, any pushback they may provide. And it got to Audrey Trout, who's apparently in charge of women's programming. And one of the 3 programs that was recommended just happens to be the Red and Black program. That's not why I got involved. And they kicked it off at San Saba and got such good reaction to it the first few weeks that they contacted us to find out about putting it in the Bambi program. So now they're coming to us versus us trying to push it on them. So we've got our fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But
sure.
TCJW, if I get the initials right, I'm sorry if I've offended anyone, because I never get the acronyms correct. Cynthia over there has done like just a phenomenal job.
Yeah, she has.
Brittany, could you talk a little bit to us about your major challenges and how people like us can help you? That again.
It cut out a little bit. Did you say about the fund?
Can you?
Could he put it in the chat?
It's cutting out.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little, but if you're able, you can type your
Can you hear me
message
now?
in the chat.
It's about your fundraising process, its challenges, and how people like us could help.
Oh, yes. So our challenges have been, everyone is in a different space when it comes to criminal justice reform and just the humanization aspect of it. And so we've had a lot of challenges in Dallas itself. We mostly go to foundations, and we're being told like our work revolves around direct service. And a lot of funders these days are wanting to fund more policy change work and campaigns, which we need. But it's so hard to show funders who've been at this a while just how important it is to have both. We need to have policy change and we need direct service at the same time. So that's one of the major challenges that we've seen. We started to expand our fundraising network nationally beyond Texas, and we found we've been finding more success outside of Texas, honestly. So we recently secured our largest grant yet from the Walmart Foundation so that was very helpful, but we're always working, for example, putting together a marketing plan now for reaching out to people to sponsor, a mother-daughter pair 1 month visit, or a mother-daughter pair 3 months of worth of visits, or 12 months for the year. And so we're gonna pitch that campaign marketing effort to individuals, like people on the call, to see if we can make more leeway with the people of the community versus the larger foundations. And then we've also been working to do it through sponsorship packets for summer camp as well. So working to sponsor a mother and daughter pairs versus saying, oh, we need $25,000 for programming. The thing now, like our budget from when I started 10 years ago has, quadrupled. And so it has been hard with the foundations when you have a $500,000 budget to fundraise $5,000 at a time, because you're always fundraising. And so we're trying to do new things, different things with kind of like fun mother-daughter groups and reaching out more to the community. And so I'm happy to be in touch, when we get we're working on our marketing campaign now, and then we'll be able to send out things, of like $150 funds this, and really see how much grassroots organizing, we can do, honestly, to get that going. But yeah, the most difficult challenge has been people, and we've come a long way, as it relates to getting people to actually care about people in prison, but we still have a long way to go. Thanks for asking.
Brittany, as far as funding, do you find that there's more opportunity for funding for a particular realm? I don't know how to put this. I used to, I'm retired, but I used to be in school safety. I used to work for a school district. And we found that the collaboration of school districts working together got us more funding federally. Is that the same for this type of situation?
I think it would be for federal government dollars. So we did a collaboration once with the Dallas County, applying for a federal grant that didn't work. We have, though, as an organization, decided that we weren't going to apply for government funding anymore. And that's just because it is such a hassle. You need a whole staff person to manage that grant, to write that grant, and we don't have the capacity to do it,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Good for you. Well, would you be able to loop us all in somehow when you do get your marketing?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because we're looking forward to trying this out, and seeing how it goes as it relates to funding mother-daughter pairs for the visits, as well as funding a girl for camp, and seeing how it is when people are funding something very specific and tangible, and seeing how receptive people are to that. Yeah.
You may, I do fundraising for Make-A-Wish, but anyway, you may want to consider when you're putting this program together, doing something where you tell them for X dollars a month. So they basically subscribe to a monthly donation. So you're not constantly going back out to everybody for another.
Okay. I'm making a note of that. That's a great point.
Because a lot of times, I mean, you're looking for big dollars, but if you get a lot of people giving $5 a month, it adds up.
It definitely does.
And so for the cost of a Starbucks, they can help make this happen every month. And if you send them just a follow-up, a photo, a quote from the mother's daughters, they're going to have a real hard time saying, I'm not doing this anymore.
No, that's a great idea. Thank you for that.
You bet.
Hi, Brittany. I just wanted to, I'm a professor at Texas A&M University, and I actually study parental incarceration and influences on children over the life course. So I do this with national data for the most part. So I just wanted to talk to you about that and also mention the WT Grant Foundation. Have you explored the WT Grant Foundation?
WT is in like the letters, WT? No, I
Exactly.
haven't.
So it is a laborious process, much like government grants, but it is a foundation grant, and they do allow partnerships between like an organization and interested academics. So that's another avenue you might be of interest to you. So I just wanted to mention that. And then
Okay.
I have 3 chapters left in your book. So if you mention this, please forgive me. I was curious about the element of conspiracy that kind of runs through the cases as well. And this aspect that a person who, brings, is the drug mule, right? Who brings something can be charged with as much as in charge of the whole enterprise. And legally, is there reform efforts on this aspect that's going on?
That is a wonderful question. And there is not. Federal conspiracy is the most far-reaching law, I think, ever. And I think arguably the intent was to be able to capture the leaders of drug conspiracies, and it has had the opposite effect in many, many ways. As you see in Sharonda's case, I mean, every case that I've had has been a federal conspiracy case. There has not, and that's interesting. That I'm glad you brought that up. But it's definitely been some progress on the sentencing reform side, but not on the side of the far reach of conspiracy. Yeah, it's something in it. It was mind blowing, the whole concept of ghost dope, and I'm just like, how do they do this? This is criminal. It's criminal in and of itself that our prosecutors can do that. Yeah.
But thank you for explaining everything so clearly. With my criminology course, I think the students, it's an introduction to criminology. I think
Awesome.
really appreciate this book. So I'm really thinking of using it in the fall. So
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Brittany, I have a non-serious question after a very serious discussion. What do the sons and the boys of the mothers feel about not being able to come with the girls?
That's a great question. We get that a lot. We haven't, we've talked to guardians and things. We haven't heard much in 10 years about that. We honestly haven't had many girls with brothers. I don't know if it's just kind of the divine nature of things that have happened for us. So we wouldn't have to face a lot of the boys feeling left out. But what we found from our moms, is like Angelica, who's our program director. She said that by her having those visits with her daughter, it helped with her relationship with the boys when she got home, because the daughter has such positive things to say about her in their relationship. And so it really helped with the boys. We do provide stipends for guardians to take the families themselves. So we do provide that. We include the boys in our holiday giving event and in other events. As it relates to that as well. But we speak to the guardians about this a lot, and I don't know if they're holding back from us or not, but we haven't. It may be because boys are in that stage sometimes where they're just like, whatever, they're not voicing their true feelings. But we haven't had a lot of that, and so we've chosen to stay focused on women and girls as a niche. But we understand how important it is for boys to have relationships with their mom too. So we try to provide financial support for guardians to take the whole families on those visits.
Right. So thoughtful.
Yeah.
Sorry, Harriet, you were saying something. Maybe I missed it.
Oh, I just said that's so thoughtful.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I think we get asked that question a lot if we are going to expand to men's prison, and then we sort of have to, it's the same as you, that we want to keep it to that niche and we want to go to the mothers. We are very focused on building that relationship of mothers with the children. So yeah, we get asked that question a lot by a lot of our volunteers.
We get asked it a lot too, and I think I used to feel a way about it because I'm like, we barely have funding for the girls. But it was just my selfish ego talking. I know it's important for boys to have relationships with their moms, but it's also important for women and girls to be empowered, because I definitely feel when women and girls benefit, so does society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you do anything with the grandmothers who are, if they're in prison themselves?
We haven't, and that is something we've talked about, because we've served girls in our empowerment workshops whose grandmothers have been incarcerated. So in our empowerment workshops, we serve girls whose mothers are currently or formerly incarcerated. And we have served girls whose grandmothers have been incarcerated through that program, but we haven't with our prison program. We've definitely considered it, and we're definitely not against it, but I think we've had such an overwhelming response over the years with mothers that we haven't had the capacity to open that up. Hopefully one day the prison will say, oh, you can bring in 50 girls, but right now we're stuck at 25. We'll take the 25 because they used to only have to bring in 12 girls. So we'll take what we can. But I will say, even though I don't feel different about the facilities themselves or prisons in general, TDCJ has been very gracious to Jim. Very, very gracious. We're grateful for our partnership.
That's good.
Any other questions?
Yeah, to be in the GEM program, do the moms have to do like what they do for Storybook? They have to be case-free for 6 weeks ahead, and then they have to be case-free during the whole 4 months. So do you require similar things of the moms in the GEM program?
Yes. I think we have case-free for 3 months before, because it's such a long-term program. Like we've had mothers in our program with their daughters that we've taken to see for 10 years. The whole 10, some 8 years, some 7. So they're in there so long. So I think TDCJ puts some stricter requirements, and then they can get one. They used to, if they got one major infraction, they would be removed from the program for 3 months. But now that is something TDCJ changed. They cannot get any infractions. They get a minor or a major, they're removed from the program for 3 months. They do get to come back. But the second infraction, they're out for good. And so in 10 years though, we may have had that happen. I think we just had it happen the 3rd time. So it doesn't happen a lot. And it's I'm hopeful TDCJ sees it as a win, because the women want to see their daughters. They do not want to jeopardize these visits. And so I wish we didn't have this new rule of minor infractions being in the way, because I'm just like, if it's a minor infraction, what is it? What really happened? Because I know these women, they think about their daughters a lot. So, but I understand the prison feels that our program is very special privilege for the women, and they want strict requirements, and so we respect that.
And we'll share out all the links and information shared in this chat. Juliette's been taking note, especially for the people in this room.
I have a question. I don't know how much everyone would be interested in it, but I'm applying to law school now, or waiting to hear back from the rest of them. And I was just wondering if you had advice for people in law school who are interested in getting into the same field, just to see what you think about it, what you could say.
Yeah, we definitely need more lawyers in this field for sure. What I feel that helped me a lot, even though I went to practice corporate law at first, I took a lot of public interest type courses in law school. And what I didn't do, probably because I didn't know any better, but I'm also skeptical of when I was in law school, how many programs existed. But I would definitely encourage you to volunteer or intern for a public interest organization that's in the space, that you want to be in, to really get a real world feel, for it, for sure. but congratulations, on even applying, it's a
Thank you.
it's a
Thank you so much.
tedious process.
Brittany, I am a lawyer, and people said what kind, and I said not much of I did legislative work, but I was amazed reading your book that you could, once you focus on corporate law, that you could even expand your brain and get over into this other stuff. I don't know how you did that. I mean, you amaze me. I don't know how you
Thank
did
you.
what you did.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's still very limited to just the federal drugs, and people reach out all the time for help. And I'm like, y'all, I promise I don't know anything about any other aspect of the criminal legal system but this, because it was like, it's so much there, too. But thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, the other thing I noticed that I think seems like the beauty of your program is, I've heard kids who had parents in prison are so ashamed and feel so alone. And you just giving these girls a group is incredible. I'm sure it helps them immensely.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that makes GEM so unique is that we've built a community of women and girls with shared lived experience. And that helps so much, and so that stigma, even on the bus ride to the prison, the stigma is removed. We're all going to the same place, everyone's in the same place. And, that I think has definitely helped. And I really work to center the voices of the women and girls we serve, making sure we're led by directly impacted women. And we're even starting a youth advisory board this year for our girls ages 14 and up. They will meet quarterly on the board to give us advice. One of the first questions I'm posing to them is, if you could take over GEM tomorrow, what would you change? Because I think one thing that us and many organizations that serve youth have failed to do is really listen to the youth, and so we're really working to listen to the girls that we serve and their needs, and things like that. And we're seeing some very interesting themes arise, especially as it relates to mental health.
Brittany, is there anything that you see that is missing to provide for the women behind bars that possibly other organizations could pick up and create some kind of program for?
I definitely think, and I know Truth Be Told does this, already, and GEM is doing it now, but people are hurting. And I think there's just this element of healing therapeutically that is needed. It's one thing to address an issue of anger management, and a whole nother to understand why you are angry. And we're really working with GEM to go, instead of trying to serve as many people as we can, is working to go slower and deeper with the women that we have through this programming. And as I mentioned, there's a lot that comes up, but there's a lot of people hurting in this world, let alone prison. And it's heavy. Things are heavy right now. And so I really wish we could see more of the trauma-informed curriculums and programming.
When you said that, all of a sudden, because one of the things with Truth Be Told, because of its title, is that we teach the women to tell their story, not necessarily the story of their crime, but what led them to where they are now. And that is so powerful. And I've just as you were saying that, I thought how impactful that would be for those young girls to hear. What were those turning points for their mothers? I would have loved to have heard that from my own mother. What led you to where you were? Because my mother was not in prison, but there was issues that my mother and I had, and she's no longer here. And now I wish I had taken the time to say, what were those turning points that made you who you are today? Just to get a better understanding and how powerful that would be. And that's a collaboration that I feel like we could do with GEM and Truth Be Told.
that would be very powerful. My mom is a graduate of Truth Be Told.
Yeah, I
She
heard
loves-
that.
Yeah.
I heard
She
that.
loves Truth Be Told. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's something, you know, I'm in a fellowship with the Aspen Institute this year. And we met in November, and our whole programming for 2 days was storytelling.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of power. There's a lot of power in storytelling and telling our stories. It's a fascinating
Mhm.
experience. And so, you know, and it's therapeutic, you know.
And
so
everybody has a story, you know, I mean,
Everybody.
you know, that's what, you know, I mean, there by the grace of God, I tell my story every semester when I'm meeting with the women, and it's just there by the grace of God, I could have been in your shoes. Just a bad
too.
decision.
Yeah, me too. And I feel that is what helps with the relatability, for sure. And just understanding, you know, talking to them, not at them, and having them talk to us. Because
Yeah.
we're trying to do much more active listening as a
Yeah.
program. I think after 10 years, you know, you just start to go through the motions. But we're really being very intentional, you know, about the healing justice component and the active listening and understanding. You know, we want to go and make pretty picture frames or something with the moms and daughters, but we got to do some healing as well. Yeah.
Sorry. I had another question. Also, the book is beautiful. I didn't say that the first time I spoke, but it was an amazing book. I was just wondering,
Thank you.
for Jim, do you have a lot of need for volunteers, like new volunteers right now? Because at least I spend like half my weeks in Dallas a lot of the time, and I know a lot of people would probably be willing to go volunteer, but do you have a need right now for people?
For our Pearl program, it is full for the year. It is wild how fast that program fills up. But something is always happening, you know, and so we will monitor that every couple of months. And I can definitely, if I can get your info or put my email in there, reach out. And then we definitely are working with our programming on expansion. And so, you know, I don't know if you're down for a weekend trip to Arkansas, you know, but you know, we definitely will need volunteers for that, you know, for sure. So to answer your question, right now we are at capacity with our Pearl visits, the prison visits, but something's always opening up there. And then we're expanding, of course, to other units. And if there's interest in volunteering with the girl only programs, we always have space for that.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're almost at time, so thank you so much for joining us, Brittany. I think we all got a lot out of this conversation, and thank you again for sharing your story, and Sharonda, and Corey, and everyone else's story. We all really love the book. So thank you again.
Thank you all
and
so
again,
much for having me, for reading the book.
Thank you for writing the book. And again, we'll share out all the information that was shared in the chat along with the recording, so everyone on this call has it. And then Juliet, do you want to share the next book we'll be reading?
Yeah, so our next book club will be Tuesday, April 18th. Brittany, you're also welcome to join if you'd like to. We're going to be switching gears. It's going to be a young adult novel for next month. So it's about a middle school boy whose father is incarcerated. The book is let me make sure I'm getting it right. Do Not Pass Go, written by Kirkpatrick Hill. And a little bit about Kirkpatrick. She's in her 80s and lives in Fairbanks, Alaska. And she was an elementary school teacher for over 30 years. And she writes about the Alaska area as her setting for her novels that she has written. I'll share out right now the RSVP form link, but we're going to be emailing that as well. So I just put it in the Zoom chat. And again, that'll be Tuesday, April 18th.
I'm going to ask that you consider, or at least watch your email for location, because I know there's another event here that night. Okay, so just.
Yeah, if anyone would like to host this meeting at their house, please let us know. It would be lovely to maybe change the location a little bit. You can let
Yeah,
Juliet,
well-
me, and Maria know.
Yeah, we're also open to suggestions for coffee shops. Might be a little
Mhm.
tricky with, trying to also do that virtually, but we can, explore some other meeting spots too to switch it up.
All right. And say the name of the book again.
Do Not Pass Go by Kirkpatrick Hill.
All right. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
thank you everyone for joining.
Thank
And
you.
welcome to everybody new. It's so nice to see all of you, and please come back.
Thank you again, Brittany.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, that was good. Yeah. Hour and a half is a long time to sit. We should take a